Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stuart Andrew Alexander.
Hello everybody, and we're back again with another show with yours truly, Stuart Andrew Alexander. And I'm taking deliberate pauses in between saying my name because today we have somebody who is a communication expert that is going to share some fantastic information with us. So without any further ado, let me just say a few words before we bring her in. Jayne Latz is an expert in communication skills. For over 25 years, she has worked as a speech-language pathologist, professional speech trainer, and a coach, and has co-authored 2 books titled Talking Business, A Guide to Professional Communication, and Talking Business When English is Your Second Language. Jayne has delivered keynote presentations on the topic she knows best, communication. Her presentations are interactive, dynamic, and designed to build confidence. She was recently featured in the Wall Street Journal and on the Today Show. Her professional speech background provides her with a unique skill set to aid both individuals and groups in improving their corporate communication skills. Wow, Jayne, that is some introduction. How are you, Jayne? Are you there?
I am here. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Stuart. And thank you for being such a fantastic role model of good communication skills.
That coming from you, I am going to take that as a huge compliment. I recently did an interview with a member of the New York Toastmasters Club, and I noticed just how conscious I became of how I was speaking and taking deliberate pauses and being mindful of my ums and ahs, and I'm feeling exactly the same way now. Now that I'm with you and knowing that you're an expert on communication. So, Jayne, the first question that I have for you today, just so that our listeners out there can get to know a little bit about you and a little bit about your backstory, could you just share with our listeners what is it that led you to this field that you're working in right now?
It actually has 2 or 3 parts to it. I have been a speech pathologist for as long as I can remember, but it starts back even further because I actually did not speak until the age of 3, which in today's world would have put me into a whole different category than I was in when I was 3, and my mother kept saying to my grandmother, "Don't worry, she'll speak when she's ready." And I did. But Stuart, the funny thing is I never knew that. I never knew I was a delayed speaker until I graduated with my master's, and we were at a cocktail party at George Washington University, and my mother felt compelled to tell my professors that story. And I turned to her and I said, "Really?" So number 1, I never knew I was a delayed speaker. Number 2, I did pursue the field of speech pathology. And then in 2006, I created Corporate Speech Solutions, which took the business of being a healthcare professional and bringing it into the business world so that I could help business professionals take their communication skills to the next level. So what led me into the field of speech pathology took a little bit of a change in 2006 when I brought it to the business world.
That, Jayne, is a fascinating backstory. And I'm just thinking that there may be some listeners out there who have experienced similar situations or who have a young child of similar age like you were, who, like you, have not begun to speak yet. So on their behalf, I'm just really curious right now. So on their behalf, Jayne, would you be open to sharing what it was that prevented you from speaking until you were 3 years old?
I'm going to answer about me, but because you did frame it that you want your listeners to benefit, I do first want to tell every parent out there, or grandparent, aunt, or uncle, that if your child is not speaking and their peers are, and you've looked at the norms and you don't feel that they are progressing the way they should, the very first most important step is to seek out a speech professional, a speech language pathologist, speak to your pediatrician, and at least get the evaluation to decide about your own child. So the story I'm going to tell about me, is similar for many, but I by no means want to diagnose and evaluate and provide misleading information to all the parents out there.
Sure.
I had a very precocious older sister, and very often when a parent says to me, "Oh, my child's not speaking," I often say, "Do they have an older sibling?" And very often, Stuart, if you think about it, if the older sibling says, "I'm thirsty," then the mother's going to bring juice to that older sibling, and they'll probably bring something to the baby. If the older sibling says, "I'm tired," they'll put the older sibling to take a nap, and they'll put the younger sibling to take a nap. So in reality, often the little one doesn't have that need to speak. And we as speech pathologists have to train the parent to develop the need to speak. So again, the most important takeaway is, although I started speaking when I was good and ready, and many, many children out there never need intervention because they too will speak when they're ready. Everyone starts on their own. I don't want anyone to say, "Oh, I don't need therapy. He'll speak when he's ready." No, they should consult with their pediatrician and if indicated, get an evaluation.
Jayne, I just really want to thank you sincerely for sharing that information, because I know that's something that's really personal to you, but I also at the same time want to just amplify what you said about seeking the advice of a professional. This was just Jayne's own opinion, so really if your child is not speaking, then please do follow that advice and seek the advice of a professional out there. So moving on, Jayne, the next question, what our listeners would just love you to answer is, what is the most common obstacle preventing people who are listening to this program, or the kind of people that you work with, from achieving their desired outcome of being able to speak with clarity, confidence, and credibility? What is it? What's stopping them out there, Jayne?
Now that we just spoke about the traditional field of speech pathology, I want to just shift and again let your listeners know that part of what we're talking about today is the company of Corporate Speech Solutions, which does provide the professional speech training to business professionals that are seeking to communicate with greater clarity, as you said. We do a tremendous amount of work with non-native English speakers to improve their pronunciation skills. But as you know, many native English speakers have a tendency to speak quickly, mumble, and they're not clear in their business communication. So that's where we come in to work with these clients and professionals. And what stands in the way? Two things. Number one is money. It is an involved, committed program. Nothing comes easy. I always compare it to golf, because at this time of year, this summer, I golf a lot, and I need lessons to become a better golfer, and lessons cost money. So to become better at anything, there is an investment. And many people want somewhat of a quick fix. They want to go on the internet and have a quick fix. But if no one's really there to guide as a coach would guide, then it's hard to make the improvements and achieve the goals without having feedback from somebody. So number one would be the cost factor. And number two is the commitment. I tell people all the time, I tell HR people, I tell directors this, whoever hires me, whether it's an individual or a company, the real important work is the practice between the sessions. And people get very excited about improving their business communication skills, gaining greater clarity. And no matter how much I say there's practice, they think there's that fairy godmother who gave us a dollar bill or money when our teeth fell out. They think that there's going to be a fairy godmother that's going to help improve their communication while they sleep. But it really does take the practice. So the two things that might interfere with someone achieving the goal would be the cost and the necessary commitment and practice.
Okay, so lack of practice, is that one of the most common barriers that you experience that's stopping people from experience clarity or speaking with clarity, confidence, and credibility? I mean, you spoke a little bit on that, but can you just expand a little bit further? Because practice, that word alone, in of itself, it just sounds so, oh God, practice. Who wants to practice, right?
Right.
So please expand a little bit on that for us, Jayne.
I like to compare it to the show on TV, Dancing with the Stars. And if anyone in your audience has never watched Dancing with the Stars, the one minute description is you take a professional dancer, you pair them with a famous person that supposedly has never danced, and in 10 weeks or a certain amount of time, they help that non-dancer become this magnificent dancer. But what's wonderful is they show us a sneak background into their dressing room of the practice, the hours and hours of practice, so that you can take this football player who has 2 left feet, and 8 weeks later or 10 weeks later, they're doing this magnificent salsa or waltz. That is what happens if you follow the method and the recommended plan of the professional speech training. With that practice, you too will sound as magnificent as that football player looked on TV when they were doing the waltz. However, to make the practice easier and not so daunting, because yes, Stuart, I agree with you, nobody wants to think about practice, they just want results. And over the years that we've been doing this, we have learned different techniques to build practice into the program. Perfect example. We just talked about children. If someone has a child and they're working on finishing the ends of their words, which is so important in building clarity and confidence, finishing the ends of your words. When you're reading a book to your child, a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, at night, that little child so happy that mommy or daddy is reading the story that they don't care that daddy or mommy are taking their time to finishing the ends of the words. That will count as practice because the person who's taking the training is spending that half hour focusing on how they're producing the words. So that's practice. It doesn't have to be sitting with the audio files that come in our workbooks. It doesn't have to be sitting with our notes. That can be considered practice, or practice, projecting your voice. You can do that reading the book. You can do that when you're sitting at dinner table with your children and your family. So there are ways to fit practice into your life during the training program without making you sit at your desk for the half hour a day.
Jayne, this is just so much more valuable than I even anticipated than it would be. And I'm just so convinced that listeners out there are going to be able to use this information that you've shared so far and actually turn it into results, just on this little bit that you've shared with us. So far, we've spoken about your backstory. We know a little bit about your history, and we know that you're duly qualified to be speaking with us today and giving us the advice that you're sharing. And then you just extensively spoke about practice and how basically not to call it practice, and instead just to have structured activities that you provide within your company. So what our listeners would love to know at this stage of the show is, have you actually got some examples out there of people who you have helped move from somebody who is a total beginner, English is not their first language, for example, their pronunciation is not 100% clear, but do you have some one or two examples of people that you've helped move from point A to point B where they're speaking clearly with clarity and with confidence so that they can build their business and attract more customers? Can you share that with us, please, Jayne?
I do. I have some very, very current examples, so you might just have to stop me because there's a few that are very recent and very exciting.
I will not stop you because this is the part. This is the part that the listeners enjoy the most, because it's one thing listening to great advice, but once you hear examples of other people who were in the same position as yourself, that's what's really interesting. So please, give us at least 3 examples. How does that sound?
Oh, then I have to make some decisions because I think I have more. I have somewhere around 4 or 5, but 2 go together. There is a CPA firm in the United States. They have offices around the United States. And recently, 2 of their offices coincidentally hired me to help 2 of their employees interview for a partner position. 2 different employees failed last year. They did not pass this big, in-depth interview process, and they failed to be promoted to the partner track, which is hugely disappointing. I was hired, again, coincidentally, separately by both 2 different offices in the country because I had done the same thing with prior employees of theirs. While this was going on, Stuart, my father was taken very ill. And I still was very committed because this was so critical to their life. And we did make sure that they got the training. And I say we because I'm a team. I have a fantastic team. It's not all Jayne Latz. We're a team. And I had to pass up one of them to one of my fabulous trainers. Long story short, they both got the promotion. And I turned to my husband the next day and I said, I really changed their lives. If they had not gotten the promotion, I worked closely with them prior to my dad getting sick. This was life-changing. It's a significant professional change. Both of them got the promotion. And yes, there will be a testimonial on my website soon. I did ask one of them, but it's not my place to give their names or companies. So that was very exciting. On the exact same type of training many years ago, an attorney came to me and said they wanted to become a judge, but it is such a rigorous interview process. They're going to be in a room. There's going to be 25 judges interviewing them, firing questions, a little intimidating. And I worked with them to prepare them for that interview, and that individual is now a judge. So those are 3 fantastic success stories that are very recent. Additionally, one that I think is fun and exciting. Several years ago, one of my trainers was working with a non-native English speaker, and her company asked her to do a presentation at the White House, the same White House that is on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. Needless to say, the client was petrified, and behind the scenes, my trainer was nervous. She came running to me. She was nervous. I prepped my trainer prepped the client, and out of 25 people that presented at the White House that day, our client, a non-native English speaker, was told that her presentation was the best one.
Wow.
So that was so exciting. So you talk about building confidence. Here are 4 stories right off the bat. And I have one more I'm going to give, and then
Sure.
I'll stop. But this one's very exciting. Again, right around the time that my dad, took deathly ill, I was prepping these two young women who were scholarship recipients of a big organization in New York, and they were invited to present at the annual dinner, which would have 500 powerful business people. One of the speakers was a 17-year-old high school graduate. She was going off to college. And the first few times I met her, she wasn't really prepared. And then I kind of disappeared. And again, I had to transfer her to one of my other trainers because I was, by my dad's side as he was, sadly dying. But again, one of my trainers stepped right up, and this young 17-year-old did her presentation on the night that she was supposed to in May, and she got a standing ovation. I was so disappointed I couldn't be there, but she got a standing ovation, and I just couldn't be prouder, even if I was there to have watched and observed. So we really do impact people's lives, and we do impact their careers and their professions.
Jayne, it's just simply awesome what you just shared there. It just goes to show the depth of your knowledge and the experience that you've accumulated over the years. This interview is just going to be an awesome resource for people out there in need of the services that you provide. I do have just one more question for you, Jayne. Can I just go ahead and fire that one away?
Sure.
Everything what you've shared with us so far sounds fantastic. And anybody who really is in the market to improve their speech has every reason to choose you over any other solutions out there. However, what about those people who are of the mindset that they can simply do all of this speaking stuff and learn to speak with clarity, confidence, and credibility, that they can do it themselves? What's your best piece of advice to people like that? What would you like to say to them?
My response, I just smiled because I said to myself, do you ever leave the house for a business meeting and not look in the mirror? And the reason we look in the mirror is we want feedback on how we look. Is our tie right for you? Is my makeup on correct for me? Do we look our best? The mirror provides feedback. In that same way, when people want to do it on their own and they download DVDs or software programs, they can practice all day long pronouncing different sounds, especially for the non-native English speakers. But if nobody is there to tell them that they're doing it correct or incorrect, they may be practicing all the wrong pronunciation. It's again comparable to, I think my golf swing is perfect, and I'm swinging and I'm hitting the ball, and I think, wow, I don't need a lesson. I'm doing a perfect job. And then I do take a lesson, and he changes everything because what I was doing was wrong. So I was at the golf range, and I was practicing it the wrong way until a skilled professional showed me the correct way. So that would be the reason why someone should work with a professional, whether it's public speaking, and we put everyone on TV, whether it's presentation skills, we have a 10-point feedback scoring system to share with our clients, or whether it's changing the pronunciation, we are there to give the feedback and guide them in the right direction.
I'm sold. I'm definitely sold. I just want to sign on the dotted line myself. But for those people out there right now who would like to know more, people who have the goal of speaking with with more clarity, with more confidence and more credibility so that they can build their professional image, improve on their business relationships, attract more business, and totally rock at their next business meeting or presentation. How can they connect with you? How do they get hold of you, Jayne?
First, the website, Corporate Speech Solutions, Corporate Speech, SPEECH, solutions.com. You can easily Google my name or put it in your URL as JayneLatz, Jayne like Jayne Mansfield, Latz.com. So those are two easy ways. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. And I respond to emails and telephone calls 7 days a week. I'm passionate about what I do, and I really am here to help others gain the skills and the confidence that they're seeking. So 7 days a week, you can reach out to Corporate Speech Solutions or Jayne Latz, that's Jayne with a Y, Latz, and find me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been speaking with Jayne Latz. She's a communication expert or an expert in communication skills. And if you are wanting to connect with Jayne, she has just made it very clear how you can reach her. I just want to thank Jayne once again for taking the time out of her busy day to come and speak with us today, and wish you all a great day. I wish you clarity. I wish you the confidence you speak, and I wish you credibility so that you can build your professional image, improve your business relationships, and build your business. Jayne, thank you so much. Any final thoughts before we leave?
I thank you so much for the interview. And as I said when we first started speaking, you are a perfect example of how to use strategic pausing, a technique we didn't talk about, but you use it masterfully. You also, if you were very conscious of reducing your fillers, your ums and uhs, you did a great job. So thank you for being just such a wonderful interviewer and communication role model.
Jayne, I'm so grateful that you said that, because I'm sat here. You can't see me because we're on the radio, but I have sweat beads running down my face. I passed. Yes, I passed.
Yes, you did.
No, seriously, it's they say, you walk in the footsteps of great men and women, and it will rub off on you, and that's what's happened today. I've been really conscious of my speech, and the end result has been apparent. So thank you so much for your time, Jayne. You have a wonderful day, and I'm sure we're going to have you back on the show again.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You're welcome.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.